Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we're going to be talking about video games. I have returned from my second honeymoon from my wonderful vacation in the hilly sides of Portugal. I had a great time. I missed the pastel de natas. I missed the octopus over roasted potatoes. I missed the port wine from the Douro Valley. I don't know if I miss walking 20,000 steps a day, but I do miss the water. I miss the tram. And I miss all those nice people. Now I'm back in America where people suck again. And we're ready to speak about Tony Hawk's Pro Skaters and all of the Tony Hawk video games, really.
Yeah.
But now I'm back in miserable America, not in Portugal, not enjoying the spoils of Europe, not entering the tile museum and seeing fancy tile art on the streets. I'm not enjoying the cobblestones. The cars are too big. They're driving on the wrong side of the road. The streets are too big. They're not narrow enough. And the food portions are just incredible. They're ginormous. I can't finish anything. I've been spoiled on goodness. And also, everything is too damn expensive. I had a fresh glass of wine. The most expensive one on the menu. €8. You know what that would have cost me here?
A lot.
A lot. We'll put it that way. If you go to Portugal, you should. And if you haven't been, you should go. I recommend it. But who am I? Except some schlub. We are Why Does This Exist? We are a podcast that speaks to you, the listeners in digital media device land, about the very weirdest in pop culture, regardless of whether it's a video game like we are about to speak of, or buff cakes like Muhammad keeps sending us, or even something not as weird as we usually get from these things, from a gentleman named Jonathan who sent things to us. He seems to enjoy Vince McMahon's mustache for some reason. I for one do not. That's probably the weirdest thing that I've seen in the last couple of weeks. Is Vince McMahon's Gomez Adams look. But
it was very bizarre.
Yes, it was not what I ever expected to see, and I wish that it would just disappear, and I wish it never was. Yes, he does. He does. I'm sure if you ask any paralegals, that's what he wanted to be. But anyway, this gentleman Jonathan sent us some photos and an article of what Lady Gaga looks like in the Joker Folie à Deux movie. We've got some early set photos. I gotta say, her costume's kind of lame. Doesn't look nearly as wacky as I thought she would look.
Mm-hmm.
It looks kind of tame, to be honest. I'm not really too worried about this. The movie might be okay, but then again, it's also going to be a musical, allegedly, which nobody wanted. So I don't know. I'll probably not watch it in theaters because of all these things. But yeah, I don't know. I'll probably just watch it on HBO Max or something. But I don't think I'm going to actually pay money to see this unless it's a nice $7 matinee at the theater nearby. Yes, we do get that. It's a little mom and pop theater, and we're fortunate enough to get matinee Wednesdays where it's $7. Otherwise, it's normally 10. So you don't really lose too much. Honestly, I'm looking more forward to paying money to see Renfield or to see Evil Dead Rise. I really want to see Evil Dead Rise, just because Evil Dead is just one of my favorite film franchises. I hope Rise isn't bad, but I think it'll be just fine. Nothing beats Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness or anything from the originals. But what can you do? I was a little bit. The Mario movie was just fine. A lot of people hated it. I hated the main voice cast, but I had some pleasant surprises in Jack Black, and I thought Seth Rogen was okay. But the movie isn't made for me. I like the fan service, but it's a kid's movie at the end of the day. So if you're an adult and you're like ranting and raving about how much you hated the Mario Brothers movie, you should probably. Well, we're not sponsored by BetterHelp, but this would be a great time. If you have a product that we could pitch and you'd like to send us a little bit of money to promote it, go right ahead and send us an email over at whydoesthisexistshow@gmail.com. We'd be very happy to plug your product and maybe we could help a couple of poor wayward souls out. You can also find us on social media over at mostly just Facebook. There's nowhere else that we really need to be at this point because, well, Twitter's a cesspool and we don't do the Instagrams. You can find us at Why Does This Exist Pod. If you want to send us some weird stuff, find something weird, tag us in there, and there you go. But you can also support us by heading on over to the Patreon website, which is patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. That's our main site at this point. All of our content and all of our articles are going to be published on there. Maybe at some point we'll get a Substack, but we don't yet. That hasn't been decided just yet. But that's where you can get everything that you need. We have a bunch of articles by our man Tony and partially by Rob and myself, such as this new article by Tony, speaking of Evil Dead, The Wacky World of Evil Dead Clones. Lots of movies that have, well, just cloned Evil Dead's plot points, or they're like identical. Some of them even claim to be unofficial sequels. You gotta read it. It's really interesting. And we appreciate each and every one of you. So, that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. The Tony Hawk games.
Yeah. Tony Hawk. Classic skateboarding games. I think pretty much, a lot of people know them and love them. Originally, the first one came out for the PlayStation and N64. Back in 1999, and then I think it also was ported to the Dreamcast and the Game Boy. But yeah, I think most people probably played it on either the PlayStation or the N64. And it was really the first good skateboarding game. I think there were a couple of others before that, but no one really kind of played them because they weren't that great.
There were a few. They were they were just okay to well, there were a couple of arcade games that people liked, but that's really it. There weren't really that many skateboarding games, and
then you had kind of older ones from the original Nintendo era, California games and shit like that, which had some extreme sports, including skateboarding.
Yep. We also had a couple of games that maybe just had skateboarding as a feature, like there was a segment in the game, or maybe there was a level where you could skateboard, but there wasn't really. You couldn't really do a whole lot. And on top of that, it was just really like a quick gimmicky level. It wasn't really as a full-on game, you really didn't have much like it.
No. And, so not only was it the first really good skateboarding game, it was probably the first actual one that was kind of close to actual skateboarding and not just arcadey. Although it is pretty arcadey. But if for especially for someone like me who's tried skateboarding a million times and would always fall on my ass, Tony Hawk was a good outlet because it's I could do shit that I can't do in real life, and it's actually fun. And the cool thing about the Tony Hawk games is that they were always like a lot of like secrets that you could like unlock, and there was like a lot of like cool stuff. Like they had like the gaps, like you had to find the gaps on each level. There was collectibles, so it was interesting because it took like a sports game, which, you know, skateboarding, and combined it with like traditional like gaming things like collecting items and finding secrets. And like with there was unlockable characters, which was always a cool thing. um the original games, and well, the best games in the series were developed by, at least in my opinion, were developed by Neversoft. So all the games that Neversoft developed, which was all the games that came out between 99 and 2007, was um the first four original games, plus the Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 and American Wasteland. Um, and then I guess Tony Hawk's Project 8, which was not that good. I never played it personally, but I heard it was not great.
It had its moments, but for the most part, it was pretty forgettable.
Yeah. Yeah. After that, they kind of like fell off. Like they did a lot of like kind of stupid gimmicky things with like you had to like buy like a skateboard peripheral
Well,
and like
I think a little after, I want to say around 2009 or something like that,
yeah.
2000, somewhere between 2007 and 2009, I think. I think Neversoft got absorbed into Activision, and Activision got like somehow, I think, became acquired by EA. I think
No,
EA.
so what
Right?
happened was
Is that what it is?
no, Activision. So what happened was Neversoft became defunct in 2014, but
Okay.
uh they so Activision always published the Tony Hawk games, and I think Neversoft was actually always a subsidiary of Activision, or let me just read through. They were always kind of associated with Activision. A lot of like games that Neversoft made were published by Activision. And I think eventually Activision did acquire them, and then kind of they got rolled into Infinity, which was
That's
the
right.
publisher of Call of Duty, or the creators of Call of Duty, the franchise.
Right.
Um,
And then they kind of got driven into the ground that way.
yeah, and
Um,
which kind of sucks because Neversoft was a great company. They made a lot of good games.
I mean, I'm sure by a certain point that a lot of the original creators had left.
Yeah,
Like the original programmers and
y-
everybody had probably like been long gone and got like a nice payday and everything,
yeah.
and moved on to to greener pastures. So you could tell, you could see that in certain, like, you could see that, I want to say, starting with probably Tony Hawk Underground 2, you start to see like a shift in you start to see a shift in the look and feel of the games.
I think
It
American
takes
Wasteland is
takes
where,
more of a comedic touch, but I think you could tell. I think American Wasteland, for sure, you could see there's like a noticeable change now in what the
yes,
game is and
yeah,
is becoming. And then as you get to like further games, um, like I want to say once you get past Project 8, then it really starts to become like, just, there's not really a whole lot of passion that's
no,
detectable in there, and it's either like a cash grab or to make sure that Activision has a skateboarding game coming out at whatever like quarter, or like really just to please the shareholders and not really to do anything else.
yeah. I think that because there was always kind of like wacky things in Tony Hawk. Like there was like a lot of jokes. Um and like the original series, the first four games had like kind of crazy unlockable characters. Like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, you could unlock Spider-Man.
Yep.
3 had Darth Maul and Wolverine. 4 had Jango Fett from Star Wars, and I think also Eddie from
Yes. Four
Iron, like the Iron Maiden.
four is my favorite one.
4 was great. 4 was good. I
Um
think 3 was probably my favorite one. Actually, no. So of the original series, I would say probably 2 or 3 was my favorite. But of the entire like Tony Hawk, I think Tony Hawk's Underground 1 is probably the one
Yeah,
I
that
put the
takes a
most
lot of the
hours in.
cake for a lot of people. I mean, in that one, you
Yeah.
also get to play Gene Simmons, which is the
Yeah.
weirdest character that they ever had.
Well,
And
it was
then
also
they,
it was also cool how you could make your own character in that. Like, and the character creator in the Tony Hawk's Underground game was
no,
actually,
it's actually really cool.
yeah, it was good. It was like almost like a wrestling game. Like there was a
Yeah,
lot of options and a lot of like clothing options that you could have and stuff.
yeah, I was very surprised by that.
Yeah.
I remember like they tried to do the facial like recognition thing where you could slap your face onto it with the PS2 technology, and I guess it was like I guess it was okay for the time because it was really
Yeah.
the best that they could do with the technology. But if you like try to do it now, obviously it doesn't look anything at all like you. But when you have nothing to compare it to, like you'll say that it's like, oh, it looks so real. But there's also a bunch of like other hidden characters that you could get,
Yes.
like Officer Dick, Private Carrera. There were also you
Hmm.
can also get Mike Hawk, which is Tony Hawk's brother, who
Hmm.
introduced him to skateboarding. You can actually unlock him in every single game, and it's just like a hidden Easter egg. You can also get like they call him the Goofy Kid, I think, in Tony Hawk Underground 1, but it's really like it's the Star Wars kid meme,
Oh yeah.
and you can unlock him somehow. And if
Yeah.
you want to play as him, you can. But he's like a super secret hidden character, and there's like a bunch of those that like you have to do a bunch of crazy things to unlock.
Yeah. One of the coolest features that was, I don't think was in the first game, but I think from 2 on, was the create a skate park uh feature where you could like basically make your own skate park. I don't know, it
Yep.
might not have been in 2.
No, it wasn't two.
It was
It
in 2.
was.
Okay.
I think it was introduced in two.
Yeah. So that was always a cool thing, and I would like, especially I think Tony Hawk's Underground probably had the most advanced of the create a skater or create a skate park
Yeah, I
things.
loved making those in there.
Yeah, I would like literally spend hours making skate parks and like these crazy like just wacky skate parks that had like a boat and like, you know, you could like jump off the half pipe into a boat or like jump over a boat or something like that, and then it would have like rails that went across the whole thing. You could just like grind the whole skate park.
Yep.
Like a friggin' roller coaster basically. Um so yeah, so and me and my friends, we would always like make like our like we would each make our own skate park and then like skate it, you know, and like skate each other's skate parks, which is always a cool thing. Um, and like I said, Underground had like the best customization options for like your creative character, and I think that's why I had probably the best like create a skate park.
Well, plus
Um,
it was the first one that had a story attached to it, and the
yes,
story was actually well done. It was well
yes,
thought out, and like Eric Sparrow was just the biggest douchebag in all of video game history.
yeah, he was,
And then like over the course of a few other games, they continue to reduce him to like nothing.
yeah,
Where by the time you get to like Tony Hawk Project 8, he's barely like he's in it for a little bit, and you just continue to like you pretty much just end him, and he basically quit skateboarding forever after that.
yeah,
Um, but it was a really cool idea that they like that they chose to go with a storyline. It had never really been done in a game like this, and you get to go through like it isn't just a regular like cookie cutter story mode. It is
no,
like you have to rise up the ranks from being an amateur growing up
yes,
in New Jersey to going through all of these hardships because Eric keeps screwing you over, and you keep touring and you're traveling and you get stuck in Russian. All of
mhm,
these things that could like potentially happen to somebody. Like it wasn't like okay, a lot of the antics were not believable. Like the whole like Hawaii plane jump spot thing that probably wouldn't happen. But like a lot of the moments in the storyline, they actually could happen to somebody in some way, shape, or form.
yeah.
Um, so it
Tony,
wasn't too like it was a well done storyline, and like proving yourself to be a pro and to like get sponsored by all these different companies and trying to court all these companies by showing them like how good you are and winning all these competitions to get noticed by pros
Yeah.
Like, it's a cool thing. And it's, and even getting like a shoe sponsor, that was the first time that I had even realized that that's where a lot of the revenue comes from. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know that all of these like endorsement, like, I had never, I mean, also the game came out when we were like probably 12 or 13. So of course you're not really thinking about that.
Mhm.
But at the time, I never realized that endorsement deals were such a big part of skateboarding. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that that was such a big part of revenue. I thought that they just, I thought that all of their revenue was like from either, from like either board sales, video sales, or just winning competitions. I had no idea that it was all of these other things going into it too.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
mean, at the time, I was skateboarding too, so I absolutely like that game. Absolutely turned me onto skateboarding, like
Mhm.
it did with so many other people.
Yeah. I think Underground 2 kind of went a little bit over the top with the story,
It did,
with the
and
whole Team Bam versus
that was
Team
kind of to
Hawk.
capitalize on the MTV craze
Yeah.
because skateboarding had really like had like a whole giant renaissance from like, and it was enjoying like the peak of its renaissance between like, I want to say 97 through um I want to say 97 through about like 2005 maybe.
Yeah.
It had a really good run,
Yeah.
and
Well, that's because
and
you
you
had
couldn't get it, there was a point where you couldn't get away from it, and that was around like 2000, that was around like 2002 maybe, like the Viva La Bam era,
yeah, Viva La
where
Bam. You had Viva La Bam, you had Jackass on
yep.
MTV, plus you had the X Games, which became popular at the time. And like, skateboarding was kind of like this underground
And you
thing
had
throughout
Robin Big too.
yeah. Well, it was like a kind of an underground thing throughout like the early like throughout the 80s, and then like it would kind of make like it would rear its head in pop culture every once in a while. Like you would have like the Ninja Turtles or something skateboarding, or like like the scene in Back to the Future where he like ripped the little girl's like scooter thing off, use the skateboard, like so. And then, but like really, Tony Hawk, I think, kind of propelled by Tony Hawk and the Tony Hawk series, it kind of exploded and became
Oh
like a
yeah.
mainstream thing in like the like you said, that time period of like the late 90s through the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Um,
And also animation was pushing it too. Like they had rocket power, and
yes,
that, did a whole lot for the sport as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And also because of the success of Tony Hawk, there were other extreme sports that were able to get their own video games too, like
yeah,
Matt Hoffman's Be It Pro BMX,
yes,
um, or um, or Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, and
yeah,
these are great games too, and like SSX Tricky, and you like they wouldn't have been able to really get any, they might not have been able to get anything, or Jet Grind Radio, like
yeah,
you might not have been able to see most of, if not all of these games, if Tony Hawk Pro Skater had not been successful.
yeah,
But I guess we should probably start at the beginning. Like, so the original Tony Hawk Pro Skater game, um, Neversoft was not looking for a skateboarding game until a company which in my research today has basically been lost to time. A company approached Activision, I believe, with
mhm,
doing a skateboarding game, and this company was going under, and this was their like Hail Mary, and they rejected the idea, but but they didn't like they were okay with the idea of a skateboarding game, but they didn't want to do anything with this developer. So I'm not sure what happened to the developer. I'd like to say that they ended up, being very successful and they got the funding that they needed, but realistically, they probably went out of business and just like had to liquidate everything to whomever it was that bought them, or maybe nobody bought them. I don't know.
mhm,
Um, but Activision or Neversoft thought about it and they were like, "Oh, okay." I think it was Activision, and Activision was like, hey, let's see what's going on here. Let's go to let's see about getting some skateboarding things. And also, Tony Hawk was kind of looking for video games, but not really. Like people were approaching him with video games, or he was kind of like looking to get. He was trying to get a video game out for skateboarding, and all they really had at the time was was like a handful of actual games, and there was an arcade game that was actually fairly popular in arcades because at the skate park in Kona, all they really had was like they had an arcade, and like the only skateboarding arcade game that they had was called I don't know, I had it right here. Um, why did this happen to me? I'm sorry for everybody listening in digital media device land. We're just a bunch of schmucks. Here we go. Top Skater was the arcade game, and there was also like it was done by Sega, and there was also like a game by EA called Street Skater in like '98. But so Tony Hawk was like, they'd only play the Top Skater game, and they wanted to, and he was like, hey, how come there's not really any skateboarding games? Like, and also Tony Hawk, like this, like he was, he went from like this was not in a good era for this was not in a good point in his life. He enjoyed making a bunch of money in the 70s, and then like in like some point in the 80s and early 90s, skateboarding just dried up.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just wasn't popular anymore. It kind of was like a passing fad that just came and went. There weren't really any budgets for competitions or really anything, and nobody really even television companies and cable companies weren't interested in carrying it anymore.
Yeah.
So like the skateboarding industry was just not in a good point. It was just not in a good place. And Tony Hawk was just like, well, I'm gonna have to like his paycheck like his income basically kept being reduced by half every year for many years, and he was like, and I don't think he had a college degree and I don't even know if he graduated high school because he was making so much money while he was in high school that there really might not have been a reason to stay in because he's said on interviews where like he was like 15 or 16 or something, and from his skateboarding winnings he was pulling in like six figures or something, or the equivalent of six figures.
Mm-hmm.
So he was like, why do I even need to go to school and to learn how to make money when I'm already doing it?
Yeah.
Which understandable. But the well dried up and he didn't know what to do, and he was like, and he noticed that video games were taking off, so he was kind of like, something of a businessman himself, and he's like, all right, I have to figure out, this might be it. Maybe this is how like we could bring skateboarding back into like just maybe not into the mainstream, but like we could at least get people talking about it again, and maybe it'll inspire people to start skating again. So he gets pitched a bunch of video games by people, and he's not really interested. They don't really feel the way that a video he thinks that a skateboarding game should feel. They're off. They're just not good games. Activision's got this idea kicking around. They're like, all right, I guess we should do a skateboarding game. Let's see what happens. But we're not going to do it, so let's give it to Neversoft, the smaller subsidiary. Mm-hmm. Neversoft is working on a game called Apocalypse, which for some reason licensed Bruce Willis starring in the game. I don't know why. So they took the Apocalypse engine that they built for it, and they slapped the skateboard onto Bruce Willis, and they tested, and they like mapped out like a couple small things, and they got the idea for the Tony Hawk Pro Skater game because they would take their lunch breaks at this bowling alley, and the bowling alley was also like their, kind of their, let's do an out of office meeting, basically. Like, let's do a creative meeting, but we're not doing it in the office, so let's just go. So like, in the words of John Goodman, fuck it, dude, let's go bowling. And that's basically what they did. They got their idea and they just kind of brainstormed and had lunch at the bowling alley. And at the bowling alley, they happen to have the Top Skater arcade game. And they're like kicking things around and they're like, hey, why don't we do like an arcade kind of game like Top Skater, but we'll do it for skateboarding. So they slap a skateboard on Bruce Willis and they create this like little like clunky-ish demo or whatever, and they like get it, they cobble it together, and they have their meeting with Tony Hawk, and they're like, they give him this whole presentation, and Tony Hawk's ready to say no, and they're like, hey, well, just play the game. So he plays the game, and he actually likes it. Mm-hmm. Hey, Mikey, he likes it, and he starts testing, and he starts like, and they like give him copies of like the demo, and he gives it to his skater friends, and they're and like they like who like have like modded systems and modded PCs. So he gives it to them, and they start like doing like crazy combos and things and like all this other stuff, and they start like doing ridiculous things. And then Tony Hawk is like, "Oh, we might actually have something." So they make the game, and like the developers put it together. They do all the things that they need to do, and within a few months before, like, and keep in mind, Tony Hawk is still a pro skater just getting by. Like, he wasn't who he was yet, but that was about to change because the game is doing fine. In '98, they're doing like they get the meeting together. They decide to do the thing. They also wanted to do a one-time buyout deal for Tony Hawk's image and likeness for the game, and Tony Hawk, being a savvy businessman, said, "No, that's a stupid idea. If you're asking me to do this, if you're trying to give me a one-time buyout, that means you think this is actually going to make money, and I would stand to lose a lot of money if I did this. So, no thank you. You have to license me every time." So they figured that out, and good for him, because his life was definitely about to change, and he would not be as wealthy as he is without that. I don't even know how long that money would have lasted, and he probably doesn't either. They also had a cool licensing deal with the skateboarding companies because they believed in the idea so much, where where the skateboarding companies did not have to pay money. They didn't have to pay any licensing fee to put their boards in the game. They just said, listen, we just have a skateboarding game coming out with Tony Hawk on it. We don't know how well it's going to do, but like we think it'll probably at least turn into some sales revenue for your company. So like just please let us use your game so that it looks legit. Like please let us use the skateboard so that it looks legit. And they were like, yeah, sure. Like why not? We've got nothing to lose. So the game is fine. It's moving along. And then the unthinkable happens. Tony Hawk lands the 900 for the first time in competition and becomes a megastar overnight. Mm-hmm. By total dumb luck, he's attached to this video game that's coming out later that year. The 900 was not in the original video game because it had never been done in competition. They had to reprogram elements of the game and shove the 900 into this like a few months to weeks before the game would come out. Mm-hmm. And the rest is history. The game takes off like gangbusters, and we get several wonderful sequels in there, all thanks to Bruce Willis, of all people. Yeah. God bless him. The fifth element of himself.
Yeah, it's interesting that they got Willis to do that game, but they never got him to voice his actual character in all the friggin' Die Hard games that they made over the years.
I didn't know they made any Die Hard games.
Well, they were all bad.
Oh, well, that's why.
Yeah. I think another like big thing that Tony Hawk's are famous for, and like kind of like it became part of its legacy, is the soundtrack. Everyone talks about their taste in music was basically like formed by like playing Tony Hawk. How many times you talk to someone they know the song Superman just because of like Tony Hawk. It became such part of like the culture of the games, the series is like the the different soundtrack, and like I think it kind of like created like a renaissance of punk rock and like ska and stuff, because like that was the soundtrack, and that was the soundtrack of like skateboarding in general, and so they were
Right.
just
Like they captured the entirety of they captured the entire culture into this like wonderful however many bit video game.
yeah yeah.
Do you like were you able to listen, was this one of those games where you could listen to the soundtrack?
I don't know if the first one had it. I think subsequent games you could.
Okay,
Uh,
I
and
actually
and I
never
know
tested them with that.
like some of the later games you could actually customize the songs that came up in the playlist.
Yes,
Like
you
I think
could.
they started that in the Tony Hawk's Underground series. You could like pick what songs you wanted to hear, basically.
Yep.
So they did eventually, like
I
make it like a little bit
maybe
more advanced.
4. I thought that you could do it in 4 too.
You might have been able to. I know for a fact in Tony Hawk's Underground you could. Because
Yeah.
I would always put like I know Tony Hawk's Underground 2 had Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash, so I would like put that on repeat because I like really like that song a lot, so I would just listen to like Ring of Fire and like
Oh my god.
there was some freaking Frank Sinatra song in it too.
Oh, it was That's Life.
Yeah, that's like,
Yeah.
which it was just hilarious because like you're listening to That's Life while you're like just wiping out like on these crazy ramps and stuff like that.
And
It's
doing
like,
graffiti on all of the property while you're smashing apart the entire level.
yeah.
Just for the sake of mayhemic destruction. Great
Yeah.
album.
Tony Hawk really, it kind of like became this cultural phenomenon because like in the late 90s and early 2000s there were so many games that were trying to recreate the magic of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and then you had games that were like not even related at all to skateboarding that would just have skateboarding segments like akin to Tony Hawk because Tony Hawk was so popular.
Right. Like,
Perfect example is
well,
Spyro.
actually, yes, I was just going to say that. Spyro,
Yes.
Year of the Dragon.
Yep. And there were others. Like it just became this like cultural
Ratchet and
phenomenon.
Clank.
Yep. Ratchet, yes.
and Clank actually had a pretty good one.
I think like even like Sonic the Hedgehog, like the 3D Sonic games where they started to add grinding the rails, like you could like actually grind the rails. That was most likely thanks to Tony Hawk.
Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, I
Yes.
remember, had that component.
Yeah. It was just this huge cultural phenomenon. And then of course you had like it kind of inspired a genre of games also. You had like skateboarding games, then you had games like later on, like after Tony Hawk kind of fell out of favor a little bit, like the games kind of like went by the wayside, like Neversoft closed and stopped making them, so like the subsequent games were not that good. You had other companies start to make I don't want to say knockoffs, but like they're trying to like fill the void that was left by Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
Right. Actually,
so you
now
had
that I
like
think of it, not to get off track, but I actually discovered Iron Maiden through that game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Eddie
Tony
was
Hawk
a playable
Pro
character.
Skater. Yes, through Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4. That's probably why it's my favorite.
Yeah.
But continue.
So yeah, like you had like Skate and Skate 2, which are like amazing games in their own right, especially Skate 2, like how like advanced it was. Skate 2 became that's where it became more of like an actual simulation. Like this is a skateboarding simulation. You're not having these crazy over the top tricks like you could do in Tony Hawk where you're like, it's like almost like you have moon gravity pretty much because the giant like air that you're getting.
Yeah.
Well, it was a little bit more realistic.
Well, Skate pretty much killed the Tony Hawk franchise. Like,
yes.
I don't
think it killed it. I think it just came at a time where
it put the nails in the coffin because
the
Tony Hawk games had been on the decline since at least American Wasteland.
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. I think American Wasteland for me was the last like Tony Hawk game that I played until like the remakes came out more recently. And I think the problem with American Wasteland,
I played Project 8 and it was fine.
I didn't play Project 8.
It was actually very difficult to get 100%, which I liked and appreciated, and also like the trick focus I thought was a really great feature.
Yeah.
And but I like I said, it was like fairly like it wasn't bad, it was just forgettable.
I think the problem,
and then every game after that was just not good.
I think the problem was is they became too ambitious, and this is like especially true with Tony Hawk's American Wasteland. Is like they tried to make a game where it was like this. There's no loading screens. You could go around the whole city without loading, but they had to do it because technology was so limited at the time. Because this game came out in 2005,
Right.
so the
They really
technology was
couldn't.
limited, and they couldn't really like. It was very hard to do. Like you had to like go through these long ass tunnels so it could load the next part of the city, and it just was
Right.
like very out of place.
And when you first got to the next part of the city, there wasn't the transitional like giant hallway.
Yeah,
So you actually got a loading screen anyway.
yeah, and I think the part of the problem is that like they kind of took out some of
In
the
Project 8,
customization
you actually
options.
didn't have a loading screen. Like they executed it. They actually were able to execute it in Project 8.
Yeah, well, that was the next generation.
But
That was the problem is that Tony Hawk's American
right.
Wasteland was on the previous generation. It came out for the GameCube, Xbox, and PlayStation 2. And it was
Project
eventually
8
they ported
Project 8 also launched on the PS2.
yeah. Well, and it was like that transitionary period where like the new consoles had just come out, so they were still releasing games on the previous consoles. So eventually I think Tony Hawk's American Wasteland was ported to the Xbox 360, but when I played it on PS2, and like I said, it was okay, but I think it was just too ambitious for the time, and it was like way beyond what the PS2 could handle hardware wise. um and so that was kind of my last foray into Tony Hawk until the later games, which is like, so they released Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD. That was back in 2012, and I got that on the PC, and that was pretty awesome because it was like basically just like an HD remake of the first game, and it was cool because Metallica were playable characters. Like you could play it. Well, I think it was only James Hetfield and Robert Trujillo, but it was awesome that you could play as James Hetfield.
That's pretty cool.
Who was an avid skateboarder, so like it actually made sense. It wasn't like just like, oh, let's just throw James Hetfield in. It's like, no, he actually can skateboard. And then I played recently. They did the Tony Hawk's 1 and 2 remake, which was like a complete HD remake of
Those
the
I
first two games.
love.
Yeah, they were great. It was a really good remake of the first two games. They did it justice, and it was made by the Vicarious Visions, who made the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy remake.
Oh, that I hated. I hated
really?
it. Well, because they screwed up the hit detection
Oh
on
yeah,
there because
yeah.
they changed it, like for some stupid reason. The
The
old
graphics were too good. That's the problem. It became too accurate.
I get. Well, I don't know. Well, I know that like they changed the polygons on the hit detect. Like
Yeah, well,
because
the hitboxes became smaller because the graphics became better. So it's like instead of having this big blocky hitbox that was easy to land on, it was like, oh no, well the graphics are actually good, so the hitbox matches what you're trying to jump on. It's like, but this is a tiny little platform that I could barely hit, and they're like, yeah,
yeah, I did not want Ninja Gaiden.
yeah, exactly.
So I abandoned those games.
But they did a good job on Tony Hawk 1.
Yes, they did. They Tony Hawk has said this in a few interviews, but there were plans to do a 3 and 4. Like they were going to try to get all of the they were going to try to get the original 4 games, and
Yeah,
who knows if there were plans to do Underground 1 and 2 if they sold well.
I would love
Probably
to see that.
I would love to
love
see
a
that
remake.
too.
I don't know if
But
they'd be able to do 2 now because BAM is like canceled.
well, yeah. Well, they'd at least be able to do the first one, but
Yeah.
It's a shame that they're not able to do it. Maybe at some point they'll be able to, but
Yeah.
I really don't know. HD has gotten mixed reviews because I think there's a couple of features in there that people weren't crazy about, but like, and then they did make a Pro Skater 5,
Which
but
I heard was terrible.
yes, I was going to say that it's like it apparently is not very good at all, and
Yeah.
it has a lot of the same problems that people didn't like about HD, but they're more pronounced, and like the game was not really tested very well when it released. So by the time they had patched everything out, it was like a Cyberpunk 2099 or 2059.
2077.
Whatever, wrong year. It doesn't matter. The game's not good. And like by the time they had patched it, the damage had been done and nobody cared about it anymore because it just had a bad reputation.
Yeah.
So, alas, they are not to this date. They are not doing a remastered Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, which sucks. But maybe they'll be able to do it at some point.
Yeah.
But the skate games definitely put like the finishing blow on the Tony Hawk franchise for the foreseeable future, just because it was just such a like, and it's not a knock on the Tony Hawk games. It's just such a different game because Skate it's so realistic and
yes,
it's harder to actually, like, instead of just button mashing and doing things and you can do this ridiculous combo where none of it makes any sense. It's impossible to do this in the real world. Skate, all of it is, for the most part, pretty realistic. You're like, most of the lines that you would do in the game, you could probably pull off in real life.
Yeah.
You'd have to be really good.
Yeah.
But you could probably pull most of them off in real life. You also, like, it was just such a breath of fresh air to people, and it was something that they didn't know that they needed, and every game was very good.
Yeah, well, and the
that
physics.
It just, yes, that's what it is. The physics, and also the way
realistic
also
physics.
right, and also the way that you even control the skateboard and and the flip tricks, it's completely different because like on Skate, the joysticks are your feet, and the board, and you're making the
triggers your hands.
Right, and you're making the realistic trajectory.
Yeah.
So it you actually have to think about what you're doing and if you can actually do it. Whereas with Tony Hawk, after a while, you build your stats up just enough, and you could pretty much do anything.
Yeah, I would put this if you want to think about it like this, Tony Hawk is like Mortal Kombat, whereas Skate is like like a UFC game or like one of like the pro wrestling games where you know Mortal Kombat is all about like just doing button combos and like doing these crazy ridiculous moves, whereas the other ones are more of like a simulation of real life. Like it's supposed to be meant like an actual like, oh, okay, this is what wrestling is or like a UFC game is, you know, it's like actual fighting. It's not like crazy fucking like, oh, let me rip your spine out and throw you off into a spike pit kind of thing. So
not that there's anything wrong with that.
Exactly. It's not a bad thing. Like, and this is the thing. I think Tony Hawk would still be successful if they came out with a new game or remastered like more of the older games, because like people like it's fun to play like an arcadey skating game where like you're just like doing these ridiculous moves and the plot is like crazy and you can play as Darth Maul. Like that's fun. Like people want that.
And there's a bunch of fun replay value. Like that's my favorite part of all of the Tony Hawk games is that they don't end.
Yes. You could play for as long as you want. It's literally about doing tricks and the multiplayer, like it's just so much fun to like you and your friends just sit back and like skate and like try to like do like who could do a better trick, who could do a better run and like make like a ridiculous score. Let's play like friggin' like skate tag where we have to like knock each other off our boards and like skate around this big arena, you know?
Right.
Like,
I was playing graffiti with the missus and and she was like I don't even know what I'm doing, but this is actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
She's like she's like, how do I do this? I'm like, just do anything. Do anything and you win. And she's like, what does that mean? I'm like, just do anything. And she's like, okay, I guess I'll try. Oh, hey, everything's blue.
Yeah.
But yeah, the multiplayers, you can't beat it with Tony Hawk. You can't. I mean, and also the reward packages are great.
Yeah.
You get the freaking videos.
Yeah, which was always a cool thing.
That's the best unlockable that you can ever ask for.
Yeah.
Because because it was so rewarding to get it. Even the Bales videos were like sometimes like more rewarding to get than the actual like skate videos, and
Yeah.
I will admit they got cheap on some of them, where like they reused old footage or like the videos got shorter. But up until Tony Hawk Underground 1, you got a great freaking video package.
Yeah.
It was
And
really cool, and
you think
you got like a 2 minute video.
you
Who
think about
does
it too.
that?
Back in those days, if you wanted to get a skate video, you had to fucking go out and buy a VHS, or like to go to like a tape trading place or something and get a
You had to go.
VHS.
Well, you had to go to a skate shop. That's the
Yeah.
only place that you could buy it.
Yeah. And like this was like actual like skating videos on a fucking CD-ROM that you put in your PlayStation and just unlocked in a video game.
Yeah.
It was like mind blowing at the time.
Yeah,
If
it
you're a
made
little kid.
dude, it made me want to learn how to skateboard, and it
Yeah.
made me pick up skateboarding, and it made me like it also created brand loyalty for the first time in my life,
Oh
where
yeah.
I would only skate with flip skateboards for however long. I only would skate with for like I would only buy particular pro models
Hmm.
because they had the best art. I would, my like that was my company. I would only buy the shoes that the skater that the pros from from a specific company had.
Hmm.
Like, you drew the line in the sand if you ran into another skater and they liked a company that you didn't really care for,
Yeah.
and you challenged them to a game of skate, and then afterwards you just kind of hang out, because like it was so stupid. You do the skateboarder test, and like depending on who they say, you'd be like, if you're like, oh, who's your favorite skater, and they'd say Tony Hawk or Bam Margera, you'd be like, wow, what a narc. Okay. All right. So like, how about we play skate, and and if you can beat us, we'll see if you can hang out, or if like you could do something cool, then you could earn our respect. It was so stupid.
Yeah.
And then the person would be really cool, and then we'd get into the music and we'd hang out and whatever. But also, like, I got to do a lot of music because of these games. I met a lot of cool friends. Some of them I still speak with, not really too many of them. Um and like, there are so many, like, and also I got to like, there's something about skateboarding where when you do it, you can't unsee the world, you see the world differently, and you can't unsee it anymore in that way. Like, I'm 33 now.
Mhm.
And I was skateboarding when I was like 12, 13 years old, up until I was maybe 17, and I had like 16, yeah, like 17, and I went back to it. I went back to it a couple of times, but too much time had passed where like it just wasn't the same anymore.
Uh-huh.
And I like didn't really have any friends who were still doing it to even hang out with. And you get to a point where like where you start to think about, oh well, crap, I can't really break my legs. I have a job to go to. I don't have, or like I really need the health insurance, and I don't want to use it on like
Yeah.
something like what am I going to do? I can't call in and say, hey, sorry guys, I can't come to work for like 6 months. I was skateboarding over the weekend, and well, it's not good. So, like, you have to make a choice, and I couldn't really do it so much anymore. But at like 12, 13, I'm not looking at a set of stairs as something to just to access a part of a building or to go into a building. Like, I'm thinking, oh man, wouldn't it be great to do a kickflip down this? Or, oh crap, look at that handrail. Man, I'm not gonna I'm not thinking about using it to go up. I'm not thinking about the old man next to me who like really is having trouble using the staircase. I'm thinking about using the handrail to go down on the skateboard. Oh man, I hope that there's no blockers on this. That's all right. Maybe I'll try to ollie kick. Maybe I'll try to ollie heel flip out. Even though I'm not that good, and there's no way that I could execute any of this stuff. I think the most stairs that I could ever like ollie was 4, which that was like maybe I did that once or twice.
Yeah.
I like it was just so crazy. Or like you see, or like I'll see a bank, or I'll see like a really nice curb with a dip on it, and I'll just think, okay, cool. I like go down this, then I'll and like you could just ollie out, and you could get some nice air and hang time, or or you see like a piece of marble, and you're like, oh, okay, well you could do a really nice nose manual on this, and maybe you could shove it out, or just all these stupid little things that like another person like wouldn't notice or they wouldn't see or they would just think, well, that's a dumb idea, or you're gonna or you'll kill yourself, so don't even try, you'll shoot your eye out, kid,
Mhm.
or anything like that. But I still see the world that way. I still I still like if I'm on a if I'm on a bus or if I'm walking somewhere or something, I can't help but see a skate spot on something, or we'll go walking somewhere, and I'll just and I'll and I'll turn to the missus, and I'll like point at like some structure, and I'll say, oh, that'd be a great I'm like, I bet that's a good skate spot. Like we were in Portugal, and there were like parts that and there were like things by the water, and I was noticing, and I was like, oh man, I bet that'd be a great skate spot. And she's like, you haven't done that in like 20 years. And I'm like, I know, but I'd like to. like I'd really like to. And then like we'd go back a couple of days, and Portugal actually has a really nice skate scene, and we'd see a group of kids just skating that exact spot, and I just tell her, I told you so. um or just, you see things like this, like as a like when if you ever skated, you know what I'm talking about. It's just like it's
Yeah.
like it's like learning how to code, and then understanding how something works, and how like all of this whole new reality into what you can do. And it's just like this ever-changing perception of all of this, like this just hidden world that's hidden in plain sight, that
Mhm.
now it's impossible for you to unsee.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it and I miss it. And I still think about going back to it. There's a skate park like walking distance from me, and every time I go for a walk in the park, I have to stay there and sit down for a few minutes just to see a few people in there.
Yeah. When I was in my 20s, I tried to learn to skate again, because I tried when I was a kid and I failed miserably. So when I was in my 20s, I was like, I really want to learn to skate, and I tried to learn to skate again, and I started to like roll around a little bit and like push off and learn some of that stuff, and then like one day I was riding and I fell and landed on my wrist and almost broke my wrist, and I'm like, all right, well, this is probably a bad idea. So
Yeah, I had stopped. The thing that really got me to stop was, well, first of all, I don't understand how I didn't die so many times. There's so many times where I probably should have been killed while I was skateboarding, whether I was like going in while I was in the street skating, or I was trying to like sketch a car like in traffic,
mhm.
or like just trying to do something ridiculous that I had no business trying without a helmet or any padding or anything. I'm lucky that the worst thing that happened to me, which was not fun, was I was skating. I skated a gap, which I thought was a big gap, and then now that I've gone back to it like years later, I realized it wasn't very big at all. And I like I landed awkwardly. I
Oh,
landed, but I landed awkwardly, and I tore four ligaments in my right foot,
oh my god.
and it was a burning, searing pain, and I'll never
Yeah.
forget that. It was not fun. I cursed out some old Russian lady that was walking by, that basically said in Russian, "What a stupid idiot," or something like
Oh
that.
my god.
um, and I had a whole boot and everything that I had to put on my that they put on my foot. I had my foot on the cast. Um, and it was a couple of weeks before school started, so the first month and a half I wasn't in school. I had a doctor's note, and I had to and when I could finally go back into school, I still had the cast on for like
Oh,
another like 4-ish weeks
wow.
or something like that, like 3-4 weeks. before it came off, and like I, like I showed up and I told my teachers, "Hey, I hope you haven't failed me yet. I'm the kid who hasn't been here for the first 4 weeks because, well, look down and you'll see what's going on." And yeah, so I stopped that time, and my foot still, it's still like never healed the same way. Like it's not the original, it's not what it was. Like it's still, I can still like, it's like if I move it a certain way, like I can make the I can hear a popping sound.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's somehow that was the worst injury I ever sustained. I'm not really sure how or why that was the worst. Probably much worse things should have happened to me with the amount of risk that I took, but if that's the worst thing that ever happens to me, I'll take it.
Yep. Well, so in conclusion, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is perfect for us uncoordinated idiots. Now we're gonna injure ourselves if we try to skate in real life.
Yeah, maybe just stick to weightlifting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And only use the machines. In fact, just go for a walk. Just stick to going for a walk.
Yeah.
A normal walk. If make that be the most strenuous activity you can do.
Yeah.
But these games obviously shaped a large part of my childhood and even bits of my adulthood.
Uh-huh.
It helped get me into metal and into the music that I'm into today.
Yeah.
And also it opened up a whole new world of possibilities for me. And these are some of my favorite games.
Yeah.
So this, well done. I hope that they're able to remaster 3 and 4.
I would like to see that. That would be amazing. And I would like to see Tony Hawk's Underground remastered because
yes, that would be great.
Or even like a new Tony Hawk's Underground because we're like in the age of the open world game. Like there's so many open world games. It's the perfect opportunity for one.
I think I think with the right team they could really really make it work.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Well, that'll be for whoever it is that listens to this in digital media device land that decides that they want to make this or not make this. I don't know if we're responsible for it. Please give us a shout out in the video game. Would be really great. And
anybody that works for Activision Blizzard, get on it. Start making them.
And don't be part of the team that only does the cash grabs every holiday quarter. Please be somebody who actually cares.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure how many are left in that company.
Probably not many.
Well, the few, the proud, not really the Marines, but someone. All right, and I think we could wrap this up. Yeah. Thank you, each and every one of you who have been who've come back to listen to this show and listen to my shtick and Rob's shtick and just all of our nonsense. We're flying by the seat of our pants, and we're trying to make sure that we can do our very best. So, like we said, if you want to give us some money, you can head over to patreon.com/whydoesthisexist. All you need is $1, and we'll love you forever. And then you can sleep on it. But we'll love you till the end of time. This has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.